A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. We're going to get right to it. We've got a beefy conversation with the California Rifle and Pistol Association President Chuck Michel, who was with us on the program earlier this week. Yeah, I think it was Monday we actually talked with Chuck. But there's so much going on in California right now. We had to have him back. You know, this data leak from the Attorney General's office yesterday exposing the personal details of California concealed carry holders. This is big, and this is really bad stuff. We're going to talk with Chuck about that, as well as the more than 12 gun control bills that are heading to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk here in just a matter of days. California, one of several blue states that is going on a full-fledged assault on our right to keep and bear arms in a reaction to the Supreme Court decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. And Chuck wonders if this leak, quote unquote, of the personal information of concealed carry holders is not, in fact, part of that backlash. Take a look and a listen. Chuck, thanks again for coming back on the program this week. You know, normally I like to give my guests a little bit of breathing room, but there's so much going on in California right now that I really do appreciate you coming on. Let's get started with this leak or the doxing of concealed carry holders in California. When you were on earlier this week, you talked about this data portal that the Attorney General Rob Bonta was putting out, and you had some concerns about the information that was supposed to be available to the public, but a heck of a lot more information was available apparently for download. What happened with the rollout of this data portal?
Well, that's a good question, and something we're trying to get to the bottom of. Remember, in California, there's all kinds of databases that the state holds, the Attorney General's office holds. There's assault weapon, so-called registrations, licensed concealed carry license holders database, firearm safety certificates. And DROS records, the dealer record of the sale of individual firearms. All of those things are part of DOJ's databases, which, by the way, are riddled with errors, not to mention the criminal records databases that they hold, which aren't specifically related to guns. But that's another story, how their error rates in all their databases, they're just riddled with them. But the point is, in this case, after the Bruin decision came down, Attorney General Bonta announced that he was doing this transparency program. Recall last year, or I think it was the year before, the legislature passed a bill to allow access to those databases by certain research institutes, primarily Garen Wintermute, to try and do studies on guns, gun owners, gun violence. You know, and we didn't trust them to be biased, and we didn't trust the state to keep the records secure. In any event, so the Attorney General announced that he was doing this transparency initiative to release some more of this data, although historically they have never, especially with respect to carry license holders, given away. We've litigated this. It's a public, your name and your city are public records, but your home address, your street address has not been held to be something that the public or a news media outlet like the LA Times, which routinely asks for these lists of permit holders, is entitled to get. And why? Well, because that would make you a target, not only from a criminal who wants to steal your firearm now that he knows you have one in your house, so go there when you're home or maybe when you're not home, or a stalker, a stalked person who has someone trying to kill them, or a celebrity who has some, a crazy fan chasing after them. They don't want their street address. Not to mention judges, prosecutors, reserve police officers, and a whole bunch of security professionals, and a whole bunch of other people who have enemies, who have people who don't like them because of what they do for a living. So none of this stuff has ever been revealed. Well, Bonta announces this transparency initiative, and 2 days later, every bit of the information, all the information, the street addresses for all the people that have concealed weapon permits in the state of California is available and can be downloaded. And who knows how many times it was downloaded, so that all this information is out there. So now the reaction obviously has begun. There is an awful lot of furious people. We are getting hundreds of questions. CRPA is getting hundreds of questions, and people joining and people donating, because we're looking into the response on this. We've got 4 legislators at least. In fact, the entire Republican caucus is now responding to this in Sacramento, and we've got sheriffs. Sheriffs are furious. Historically, there's been statutes that limited the sheriff from disclosing street addresses, but ironically, it doesn't apply to the Attorney General, because nobody ever thought the Attorney General would ever go and do something this extreme that puts so many lives in danger.
Yeah, and by the way, Bonta's office released a statement, I guess, to the Center Square yesterday afternoon saying, quote, "We are investigating an exposure of individual personal information connected to the DOJ firearms dashboard. Any unauthorized release of personal information is unacceptable. We are working swiftly to address this situation and will provide additional information as soon as possible." So a non-response response from the Attorney General's office. Okay, yeah, we're aware, really bad, but hey, we're working on it. Chuck, I mean, again, you talk about names, addresses. I've seen reports that driver's license numbers were available. I've even seen folks, I've not been able to confirm this, but there were some folks on a Reddit board talking about how they were able to actually use the information that they were able to download and use that to actually get to firearm purchase records. That, there was a whole wealth of information that is supposed to be private, that is supposed to be confidential, that was available for anybody who is willing to just, make a few clicks.
That's right. And we're trying to get to the CCW data breach is pretty clear. The licensed concealed carry database breach is pretty clear. The others, it's not quite as clear. We're trying to get to the bottom of exactly what was released. Thankfully, the DOJ made several attempts to take this down. To limit the access. They finally took the whole thing down. Mm-hmm. So for now, at least, that nobody else can get access to this. But who knows how many people did? How many people downloaded it,
and how many people are sharing it? I mean, that's the thing, right?
Exactly. Once they've got it down, you can't unring that bell. That cat is out of the bag. So the database is out there now. The question is, I try not to attribute to conspiracy what can be blamed on bureaucratic incompetence.
Right.
I hope that this is some low-level nincompoop working for the California Attorney General's office that was told to, administer this website, and they were given links to data that they didn't know where to draw the line on, and so they just posted everything because they weren't, the head of the DOJ Bureau of Firearms really doesn't know anything about guns. That's not unusual. So hopefully, well, I mean, it doesn't really matter as a practical matter, but there are signs that this could be retribution. I mean, that's the tone in Sacramento right now. Sore loser, vindictive, punish gun owners, overreact to the Supreme Court's ruling because they're not going to get their way. And their way, by the way, is not just pass a bunch of gun control laws. That's certainly part of it, but their end objective is to murder the gun culture. They do not want anybody else getting into the firearms, the sports, the value of it for self-defense. They want to make it as hard as possible. They want to eliminate gun shows, zone out gun ranges, just make it impossible to participate in the shooting sports and make it too difficult, red tape it to death. So nobody can get a permit. And so that's what they're doing. There's a law pending now that will tighten up concealed weapon permits, make a whole bunch of zones, gun-free zones, set as sensitive places, quote unquote, which the Supreme Court said you can do, but you can't overdo. So that's the atmosphere up now. And in that context, this happens. It's not unreasonable to think that this is by design from the Attorney General to try and chill people from applying for permits. So now the interesting thing will be we're going to go through this list and see how many liberal politicians have a concealed weapon permit.
Yeah, see that, I was engaged in a little bit of speculation and bearing arms about this yesterday, and I said, I'm with you. Hanlon's razor, never ascribed to malice. What can be ascribed to incompetence? But at the same time, I mean, look, I've worked for a state agency in one of my previous lives. I know the layers of bureaucracy that you have to go through before any project gets signed off on. So, look, I don't know if this came from the Attorney General himself, but look, I mean, we just saw the leak of the Dobbs decision of the Supreme Court, right? I mean, that's a pretty leak-proof institution. So the idea that there'd be some anti-gun nut working in the AG's office who had access to these files, maybe was even involved in putting this portal together, who said to himself or herself, what, these dirty concealed carry holders, they don't deserve any privacy. I mean, I can see that too. That's the thing. We don't know, because there are a lot of plausible explanations for how this happened. But as you say, the at the end of the day, why this happened is less important than the fact that it happened. And what recourse, I mean, you say you're investigating this. I know you've talked about the possibility of litigation. What would that look like? And what is CRPA doing right now to figure out what your next steps are going to be?
Well, I have three. Well, first of all, let me say there are courtroom remedies potentially, and then there's remedies that the Attorney General himself can put in place. One of the things the Attorney General has to do, and we've told him this, and the Fresno sheriff is reporting that he agreed. He has to notify everyone. And that's what there's a state law that says this. He has to notify everyone of this breach so that they, are made aware that this information is now out there and can take whatever steps they want to take. The problem is, what are they going to do?
Right.
I mean, you can try and move your house. That's a bit disruptive because the Attorney General did this. What about judges, for crying out loud? There's like 250 judges just out of the county of Los Angeles that are on this list. They're all, we just had Judge Taylor and his wife, I believe it's Taylor, were murdered because he registered his car to his home address, and somebody who didn't like his opinion found it and went and murdered him and his wife. I mean, this is going to hit the Daily Journal, which is the legal newspaper in California today. And I think judges are going to go absolutely bonkers about this. So there's potential legislative remedies, there's potential notifications and things that the Attorney General can try and do. None of it is really going to unring this bell that I can see. So what are you going to do? Put up security? Celebrities and judges and prosecutors are going to put up security. So then, and even if you go to court, the problem is the court can't go out and get this stuff back off the internet either. You won't be able to get damages. So we're looking into, because they need to learn a lesson, they need to be taught a lesson. We're looking into potential causes of action against the Attorney General for this violation of the right to privacy. Problem is there are some immunity issues. The statute, as I said earlier, applies more specifically to sheriffs than the Attorney General's office itself. So I've got 3 lawyers sitting in the office up half the night, working up the analysis of what potential causes of action, what potential legal violations there were in this case, what kind of lawsuit could be filed. Is it a class action? Are there subclasses, judges, prosecutors, individuals? What can be done? Folks who want to keep track of that should subscribe to the alerts coming out of CRPA.org, because we will be putting updates out as soon as there's something to talk about. And also CRPA has put together a landing page, a collection on its website of all the materials, the media coverage, the calguns.net, the Reddit chat boards, all those things, because as I said, we're getting hundreds of questions and questions from reporters wanting to know what the heck. And we want to just have a sort of a one-stop shop where folks can get the answers. So that's what we're working on. But in the meantime, the big question right now is, what is Bonta going to do voluntarily, and what can we make him do in court? And we're working on it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what the fire drill is today. There'll be something else. There's 16 bills that are going to be signed tomorrow, and Newsom has promised to sign them on Friday because he's so mad. They're all such sore losers and vindictive bureaucrats and politicians. They just hate that their agenda is getting knocked off the rails. Never mind that they condemn the conservative agenda, but they're a liberal agenda. They're just mad because for once they lost one in California, and they don't like it. And now payback, they're trying to make payback against law-abiding gun owners, which is absurd.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, listen, we don't have time to go through all 16 bills. We'd be here all day, and I know you've got other stuff to do. But I did see two of the bills that were passed. Basically, invite Californians to sue gun makers every time a firearm is used in the commission of a crime. I mean, this is something that Gavin Newsom has talked about for months as sort of a response to the Texas abortion law. That's going to get signed. What are some of the other? Obviously, all 16 bills, I'm sure, are concerning to you. But what are some of the ones that you think are going to be a top priority to challenge in court once they're signed?
Well, the CCW bill is going to be the challenge because they're going to expand sensitive places to be way overbroad, way unconstitutionally overbroad. So and they're going to beef up good moral character. They're trying to make your political inclinations and your financial condition to be indications of moral character, which is baloney. So that's going to be our focus. What we really ought to do is you should have Rick Travis, the lobbyist for CRPA, on next week, because we'll see if they've all been signed, and we'll know what has actually happened. Get him on here next week. He'll go through them with you. But the bottom line is, every single one of those bills is constitutionally vulnerable now. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of having the funding to file this many lawsuits. I mean, I've got my staff working their tails off, and we're having a hard time keeping up. There's the ongoing stuff like these bills, which that happens every year. This year we have a lot more. But then to have these daily fire drills where politicians are making some kind of ridiculous announcement condemning gun owners or passing some a new test, promoting a new test to make it harder to exercise your Second Amendment rights. It's just we're dancing as fast as we can, but I need more help, and to get that help, CRPA needs the funding. I hate to beg, for money, but this is we're at a historic break. We're at a historic point right now, and California is as we've laughed about this before, it's the moldy petri dish, the lab dish of bad gun control ideas. They take this stuff in California and they take it nationally. So even if you're in Texas, help us, strangle these ideas in their crib, okay? Because we don't want it being put. It's not like another state is going to see this and say, oh, we should do this. There are anti-gun owner groups in California that are pushing this stuff nationally and federally. So it's not an accident. It's intentional. It's coming soon to a neighborhood near you, whether you like it or not. So help us stop it here. We've got to sue. I'm going to get a T-shirt.
Sue, baby, sue.
That's a good idea, actually.
Right?
I got a CRPA T-shirt.
I'll buy one. Hey, listen, I would echo that. By the way, I was speaking with Joel Persinger yesterday from Gun Guy TV, and he's down in San Diego, and same thing. I mean, he actually talked about his last conversation with you, and again, how important it is to look. We got a great decision in Bruin, no doubt about it. But in order to make that decision have teeth, as you say, the lawsuits and the litigation are actually ramping up. Things aren't slowing down now after Bruin. Things are getting kicked up to a whole other level because of this Democratic overreaction that you talk about. They're lashing out. They're desperate. They know that this decision is bad news for the fundamentals of their ideology. And so they're getting desperate, which is why again, we have to go on offense right now, and we've got a great opportunity to do so. So I would echo your call. Kick in a couple of bucks wherever you can to help fight these really bad laws, because it is so critically important right now that we are able to stay on offense. Listen, last question here regarding the database leak, and I wouldn't even call it a data breach. This was just a leak, in my opinion. Does this have any impact whatsoever, you think, on the number of databases that are there in California? Does this change the political discussion about why the state needs to collect this much information, hold on to this much information, if they cannot secure this information?
Well, that's a discussion that the Republican caucus will be bringing up in Sacramento, but I suspect the Democratic caucus will just ignore it.
Yeah,
which is what they do.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't care. That's why they're signing 16 bills. If Bruin hadn't been decided, Newsom might actually thoughtfully review those bills, or at least a little bit thoughtfully. Might not sign them all. In previous years, he hasn't signed every bill that was sent to him.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's just, before he even sees them, he's committed to signing them because he's just angry. So I don't know that, should they be looking at this data leak as a lesson? I mean, this is why we don't want to have a gun owner registration database.
Right.
You need to answer the question about why we oppose registration. Here's part of your answer. It's right here, staring you in the face and staring in the and walking in the front door of a couple 100,000 CCW holders in the state of California who are now afraid that somebody's going to come knocking at their door looking for their gun, or who's unhappy with some decision that a judge made, or some arrest a police officer made, or who knows what. The government could, a government bureaucrat could mess up a wet dream. I mean, they can't do anything right. This is classic. Even before they leaked this, the databases were not kept up right. They're riddled with errors. Even the criminal history database is riddled with errors. So, this is just, I just have really no faith in the government's ability to do anything correctly other than try and seize more power and use it to ram a big government agenda down our throats.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm glad that gun owners in California have you in the fight, have the CRPA there. And I know we're going to be talking again very soon. I will reach out to Rick Travis next week so we can talk more about the dirty dozen and a half or so gun control bills that are headed to Governor Newsom's desk. In the meantime, again, I would encourage folks, check out CRPA.org. As Chuck mentioned, they've got the landing page right there with all of the information that they're collecting on this leak from the AG's office. Chuck, again, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for spending some time with us today. And I look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Very soon, Cam. And thanks for helping us get the word out. Without you, we'd be working in a vacuum, and people need to appreciate what's going on and get involved. We are going to take back a lot of the infringements that have been shoved down our throat in California for the last couple of decades. That's part of the CRPA's Second Amendment Reckoning campaign. It is time for a reckoning. We'll fight our way through this pushback from the political leaders, and then we're going to push to get some things undone. So that's all happening.
I really do appreciate Chuck joining us on the program, and we will be talking with Rick Travis next week about some of these gun control bills. We're also scheduled to talk with New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Executive Director Tom King on tomorrow's program. Governor Kathy Hochul, calling lawmakers back into an extraordinary session in Albany on Thursday, specifically to pass more gun control laws in response to the Bruin decision. So we're going to get a first-hand report from Tom King about what these bills look like and I'd say the anticipated court challenges that are coming, because New York still doesn't get, they get it. They get it. They just refuse to acknowledge the fact that our right to keep and bear arms is a real right. It is a fundamental right. It is not, as Justice Clarence Thomas said, a second-class right, but it is a right that is still disrespected, held with contempt by the blue state Democrats in places like New York in California. All right, listen, because of the beefiness and the lengthiness of our conversation with Chuck Michel, I'm going to make an executive decision to skip today's recidivist report and our good deed of the day. We'll pick those back up again tomorrow. But I do have an update on yesterday's armed citizen story from Philadelphia. I always say, based on what we know now, this looks like a case of self-defense. Well, there are more details emerging from yesterday's story that suggest this might not have been self-defense in Philadelphia. Apparently, the two individuals who shot and killed two home invaders are still in police custody, or at least as of Tuesday afternoon, they were. The two men, ages 22 and 23, being questioned in the fatal shootings of 18-year-old Deshaun Jefferson and 33-year-old Richard Taylor. Police say that Jefferson and Taylor were unarmed when they kicked in the common door of the two-apartment row house where the roommates lived on the ground floor. One police spokesperson, Captain Jason Smith, with the Philadelphia Homicide Unit, says there was an apparent argument, but the circumstances surrounding that argument are still not clear at this time. Taylor was shot 10 times. Jefferson was shot 8 times. Smith said there may have been a racial aspect to the crime as well. Jefferson, who was black, had argued with the 23-year-old who lived there at the domicile, who is Asian. They apparently first argued over the phone on Monday, hurling racial slurs back and forth after the 23-year-old accused Jefferson of harassing a friend of his. Later in the day, police say Jefferson and Taylor showed up at the apartment, kicked in that common front door, entered the first floor hallway, and began banging on the roommate's apartment door. The 23-year-old then called his roommate, who quickly arrived wearing a ski mask and latex gloves, according to police. Yeah, that's a troubling sign. That roommate then opened fire, striking Taylor 8 times in the hallway. Captain Smith with the Philly Homicide Unit says the 22-year-old told police that one of the victims reached for his waistband to retrieve a gun. Smith said that no weapons were recovered from either of the victims. The 22-year-old then fled the scene after the shooting, but returned a short time later without the mask and gloves and wearing different clothes. The other guy who had kicked in the front door, 18-year-old Deshaun Jefferson, meanwhile, ran to the basement of this row home and was pursued by the 23-year-old roommate, who then shot him 10 times. The homicide captain supposedly says he was threatened by the unarmed Mr. Jefferson. So, again, there are a lot of unresolved questions here regarding this incident. The DA's office says the shooting is still a, quote, very active investigation. So we will continue to keep our eyes on this story and bring you any more developments as they become available. But right now, we'll take this off of the clear-cut case of self-defense pile and put it in the yet-to-be-determined pile. But based on some of the evidence the police are talking about, it might be difficult to prove that you were acting in self-defense, particularly if you actually pursued somebody rather than, locking your door and calling 911 at that point. The pursuit of that individual into the basement of this common area basement, I think, does raise some questions about whether or not that was self-defense. But again, we will wait and see what the investigation reveals. We do have another armed citizen story for you. This one also not quite as cut and dried as you might think. Out in San Francisco, a man who shot an attacker on a train will not be charged with the shooting, but is facing gun charges, according to his attorney. Fox in San Francisco are reporting on this case, which, again, involved an attacker on a municipal train in San Francisco. 26-year-old Javon Green faces charges now of having a concealed weapon in a public place and having a loaded gun in a public place. Both of those are felonies. They could possibly be reduced to misdemeanors, according to Green's attorney, Randy Knox. He was scheduled for a court appearance yesterday. But he will not be facing charges for actually shooting Nesta Brown last Wednesday on a train, according to his attorney. The attorney told a local paper that his client was a security guard who carried a firearm for protection because he had twice been shot, and that he had twice tried to move away from a man on the train, believed to be Nesta Bowen, who had been sitting next to Green. According to Green, the man was mumbling, saying, quote, aggressive things. Green then got up and walked away, but the man followed him and then took a knife from his pants. According to Green's attorney, Green then said to him, "What are you going to do? Stab me?" And then he started to run away. His attorney says, quote, "It's a clear-cut case of self-defense. Surveillance footage obtained by the San Francisco Chronicle appears to show the man pulling something from his pocket and then charging at Green, swinging at his face with his fist with what appears to be a knife. Green backs up, and then as they approach the end of the train car where he could retreat no further, that is when Green drew his firearm and shot the man. Police said that Green fled when the train stopped in the Castro neighborhood. He was arrested the next day in the nearby town of Pittsburgh. A 70-year-old passenger on the train was also wounded with non-life-threatening injuries. Green's attorney said that Green apologized to the man as well as to other train passengers. And again, acting in self-defense with a firearm that, thanks to California's laws, may issue laws. Again, remember, this happened the day before the Bruen decision came down. Raises all kinds of questions about whether or not Javon Green, frankly, should be charged with possessing a firearm, given that the courts have already said, the Supreme Court has said, that the may issue laws in California, as well as New York, are unconstitutional. And San Francisco actually has one of the lowest rates of concealed carry in the state. There are only a handful of active permits. It is virtually impossible for the average citizen, someone like Javon Green, to obtain a license to carry. So we're going to keep our eyes on this case as well. Again, tomorrow, we're going to be talking with Tom King, head of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, about the extraordinary session that'll be underway in Albany. I'd encourage you to check that out. I would also encourage you to head to bearingarms.com throughout the day for the latest Second Amendment news and information, because it is a critically important time right now. There's a lot of stuff going on all around the country, and we are doing our best to make sure that you know all about it. If you like what you see, by the way, you can always become a VIP subscriber. Just use the promo code GUNRIGHTS when you go to bearingarms.com/subscribe. Not only will you be supporting the independent pro-Second Amendment journalism that we do, but as our way of saying thanks, because we really do appreciate your support, we're going to give you exclusive content, whether it's news stories, commentary, stuff you won't find anywhere else, because your support does make a difference, and it really does matter. Thanks again for being a part of today's program. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.